Hello, and welcome back to In Progress. I am your host, Raymond Perez. So, every so often, which means every time I feel like it, we do a show here that does not take too much time to actually produce. And what that means is, I'm going to do the laziest form of content, which is reacting. Yes, but I won't sadly be doing the even worse style of reacting that is just watching a video and not even adding anything. I'm going to actually give my own takes on questions asked to liberals on Reddit. So there is this subreddit called AskaLiberal, which I will put up on the screen now. And it's a fine subreddit. I have no particular qualms with it, other than the fact that some of the questions tend to be a bit silly. But outside of that, as King Liberal, I have to answer these questions. Oh no, that made it worse. I need to answer some questions that are asked to liberals. Now, because I am not a coward, I am going to be asking, or answering rather, the controversial questions, not the controversial questions. And originally, wow, that was actually a bad idea. I mean, just looking at these are absolutely terrible, but I will try to answer these questions to the best of my ability without getting upset at the stupidity of some of these questions. So the first question is actually one of those stupid questions. Why are so many on the left willing to compromise all their stances on rights when guns are the subject of the conversation? So that makes no sense, number one, because when you look at questions like this, you have to first ask, is it trafficking in any assumptions? Is it putting a premise into the question that someone who answers it may not agree with? That's called a loaded question, and this question is very loaded. It's apparently asked by someone who is not the brightest. That's literally their name here, not the brightest, which of course is very true, because they asked such a silly loaded question. Now, the answer to this, number one, is that many on the left aren't willing to compromise those stances on rights. What stances on rights are even being talked about here? So just to quickly look, title says it all. No, it doesn't. Well, it says a lot, but not what you think it does. Why are so many so willing to be complete hypocrites? Okay, so this person basically believes that they are completely correct on everything, right? They say the lack of integrity is a problem for the right. I assume they only believe this when the right disagrees with them, and then acceptable on the left when talking about guns, which I assume is only true because they disagree with the left on guns. Okay, so because the question is so silly, I'm not even going to answer it. How is voter ID racist, but gun control is not? Okay. To begin, I don't support voter ID either. That's good. I'm not sure if they're racist or not. Well, when people say voter ID is racist, what they mean is that Black people have lesser access to getting identification because identification costs money, and also Black people just, are more likely to not be within the system, quote unquote. Okay. One of the main criticisms regarding voter ID is that they're racist because minorities are disproportionately impacted. Okay. I mean, that's a fine summary of why people believe that. Then couldn't you apply this same reasoning to many gun control laws, as they too disproportionately affect minorities? I mean, I would have to know more about that. I don't. Things like requiring training saves would be financial barriers, which are just, I mean, that's true. Yeah, that's true. I mean, it is also true that gun control has also been used. Yeah, this guy mentions it, has also been used in a racist manner. I mean, are gun control laws racist? I think the answer is probably not. But with every policy, you have to weigh the pros versus the cons. Every policy is a trade-off. So even if gun control is not necessarily racist, but if gun control is racist in the sense that it disproportionately impacts minority communities, there could be a way to make gun control that doesn't impact minority communities. And even if it's a disproportionate impact to minority communities, there is also the question of, is it a good law, right? Because just because some law disproportionately impacts minority communities doesn't mean that it's a bad law. For instance, laws against murder, Black people tend to be incarcerated for murder more than white people, but that's not a consequence of the law, but a consequence of other parts of the system. So that just needs to be discussed very clearly when you when you ask a question like that. Okay, did anyone else facepalm after Hakeem Jeffries, who is, by the way, the new minority leader of the House, he replaced Nancy Pelosi, said that Democrats will not cut a deal with moderate Republicans to elect a moderate Republican for Speaker of the House? I don't really know. I think it's too early to say whether that was a good decision. I just don't really believe a lot of the reporting that, like, Representative Don Bacon of Nebraska 2, I think, and, former Representative Fred Upton, who was, I think, in Michigan, that they would become Speaker. I don't know if I even really buy that. I feel like if Hakeem Jeffries knew that would happen, then he probably would have pushed for that. But the question is, do you really want a Democratic-controlled House with a Republican majority? I think the answer is no. I just wonder whether it's even better for the Republicans to have the House just because it's so obvious how silly they are. Like, even in the first 10 days, they've just gone completely nuts. They couldn't elect a speaker. Now we're going to face a debt ceiling fight. I think on January 15th, the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen basically said that the U.S. could default. And remember that this happened already in 2013 when I think it was Standard & Poor, the S&P, they downgraded American Treasury bills in terms of their rating. That could have been Moody's. I don't remember who did it, but they downgraded it from AAA to AA+ or something stupid like that. But anyway, the point is, Republicans controlling the House is bad, but, like, how bad is it, I guess, is the question. And would it be better for Democrats to hold the speakership when they don't have a working majority in the House? The answer probably is no. Can pro-gun liberals explain their stance? Yes, I assume. That's why they hold that stance. But I would consider myself not necessarily a pro-gun liberal, but not as anti-gun as many liberals are. The main reason why I'm quote-unquote pro-gun, in the sense that I support the fact that people have the right to bear arms, is because I think people just have the right to defend themselves, and self-defense is obviously super important. The question is, is assault rifle, are assault rifles like, the AR-15, are they an actual legitimate form of self-defense? I think the answer to that is probably not. But the fact that America is so armed means that we can never get invaded, so that's kind of good. Good question next, if it's in good faith. All lives matter. What's the problem with that? Well, this is simple. All lives do matter. I mean, in the sense that, like, in the West, we just tend to assume that all lives matter. That's like a foundational principle of liberal democracy, right? All lives matter. That's true. But then you have to ask, why are people saying all lives matter all of a sudden? And the reason why is because people were saying Black Lives Matter, and a group of individuals who were very angry at this BLM movement, they were just furious, right? So they decided to be exceptionally dense and say all lives matter as a response, as if that is a response to the movement, which it isn't. Because the idea of Black Lives Matter is basically to centralize the Black struggle and to point out that within the American system, Black lives seem to matter less than white lives. So that's the point of all lives matter, or Black Lives Matter. And the point of all lives matter is to discredit that notion through implication. So that's the problem with all lives matter. Do you think there are some poor people whose poverty is a result of their own bad choices? Yes. Just moving on. Is the song Baby It's Cold Outside problematic? I don't even know. Baby It's Cold Outside. I feel like that's a Christmas song. Yeah. I do know that song now. And is it problematic? I mean, is this a question to really ask? Does anyone care? Who is sitting down really just crying that someone is singing Baby It's Cold Outside? I think the answer is no one. So is the question even important? The answer is no. Which is probably the same answer I would give to this actual question. No, or maybe, or really, who gives a shit? Okay. Do you support... What is stupid? Okay. Do you support abortion? This is so bad. I'm not going to read it. Sorry. What, if anything, do you like? It's the same guy now. Okay. I am going to read this question because it's so okay. Do you support abortions because the baby isn't the gender the mother wanted? No. I mean, it's that simple. I don't even know what to say. Okay. Why does there seem to be a real hatred for Bernie Sanders and other progressives from some liberal circles like Enough Sanders Spam? Now, for those who don't know, Enough Sanders Spam was a Reddit community that existed, I think, began in 2015, continued until 2020, that basically opposed Bernie Sanders. So the argument, or really question is, why do some liberals hate Bernie Sanders? And the answer to that should be, just look at what they say, right? That's like the obvious answer. Do I hate Bernie Sanders? No. Did I vote for Bernie Sanders? No, I couldn't vote in 2020. But if I could have voted in 2020, I would have voted for Joe Biden, and I probably still would vote for Joe Biden, even knowing how his administration has gone. And watch out for my video on how that has gone in the future. Which, by the way, I don't really think it's gone particularly well, but that's mostly because of things not necessarily outside of Biden's control, but things that wouldn't really have been fixed under Bernie Sanders. There are some other good ones here, but I need to pause and find actual good ones rather than, kind of boring ones. Okay, this one's also interesting in the sense that it's stupid. What do you think about the concept that the left is primarily concerned about what feels good and the right is concerned with what does good? I would say that's particularly silly. And by the way, I wouldn't flip it around either. The left and the right are not defined by what feels good and what does good. The left and the right are defined by how they believe power should be distributed, right? The right tends to believe in hierarchies. The left tends to believe in equality. I mean, that's the difference. How is it that someone that is a person, how is that someone that, I think that's an abortion question. I'm just going to skip it. That's like not English. Wow. That's like putting something through Google Translate 50 times. Doesn't make any sense. Okay. This one is the last one I want to do. Wait, no. Should we require preschools to call the Secretary of Commerce when they sing Rain, Rain, Go Away? What does that even mean? Okay, I mean, that's like mildly funny in the sense that it's like so unbelievably dumb. Like people, like this nationalist, let's say, really thought this was a gotcha. He like really thought he got liberals. Liberalism just ended, like immediately when he saw that and posted it. Rain, Rain, Go Away is really the end of liberalism. Fukuyama was correct. Now, sorry, that Fukuyama joke doesn't land because that's not what Fukuyama said, but let's push it aside. Okay, do you agree with, okay, some of these are just insane, but I really want to get to John Mearsheimer because so many people are just very mad at John Mearsheimer for some reason. Now, I'm a liberal. I think that, the United States should defend Ukraine in terms of giving them weapons, but it is also silly that many people on the liberal side are just very mad at John Mearsheimer, claiming that he's funded by Russia, when Mearsheimer has been saying these things for 20 years, 30 years even. He even believes that Ukraine should have nuclear weapons in order to, or at least he argued that in 1990-something, 1994, 5. I don't really know what he says now about it. But, they're just very mad at John Mearsheimer, even though he's been a realist his entire career, and he's taught in introductory international relations courses as one of the premier realists. So it's just very strange that people are just furious at Mearsheimer for his view on the Russia-Ukraine conflict, when his view is very academic, in the sense that no one gives a shit about it outside of academia. Okay, so if we look here, do you agree with John Mearsheimer's complex view of the Ukraine war, as well as his view that China is a bigger threat than Russia? So basically, I've already read this. Well, okay, I mean, this guy's going crazy here. I don't really care what he has to say. Much more importantly, basically, Mearsheimer is a quote-unquote critic of Western foreign policy, as this guy says. And yeah, the ordinary person taking a surface-level view might see him as being anti-American or anti-Western. True. Like people just tend to believe that Mearsheimer is just anti-West, which is not true. I mean, he believes, number one, that that focusing on Russia is problematic to American national interest, because America is much more, because China is a much bigger threat than Russia to the United States. And that's probably true. I think that, well, sorry, I'm not saying that Mearsheimer's solutions are probably true, but China is almost certainly a bigger threat to American national interests than Russia. But the argument against what Mearsheimer says is you should argue against realism, right? You don't need to say that Mearsheimer is a Russian stooge in order to say that Mearsheimer is wrong, right? Which many liberals, for some reason, just don't remember. But as King Liberal, I am giving Mearsheimer the Raymond Perez seal of not disapproval, in the sense that I don't really care that Mearsheimer is going around academia saying realist things because that's what he's done for 30 years. And just because there's something to be mad at now does not mean all of his contributions to academia are wrong, right? I mean, we just have to put Mearsheimer in context. Okay, speaking about in context, in progress, I guess. That wasn't particularly good segue, but I'll use it anyway. Remember that the change we need to see is always in progress. Thank you for watching. And like, comment, and subscribe.